Hey, everybody, it's Monday, September 16th, 2024. Welcome to the NFL Fantasy Football Show, where we're hoping no one remembers our preseason takes. It's me and your man, MG Marcus Grant, joined by Michael F. Florio and Laquan Jones. Week 2, fellas, I feel like we say this every year, but it feels like it happens earlier and earlier. Can we just turn injuries off, Florio, please?
Yeah, I want to unplug the season, blowing it, and plug it back in like it's an N64 cartridge or something like that. I mean, I was the Isaiah Pacheco guy, and now I'm just sad. I don't know what else to really say about it.
Yeah, which actually gets us into what we're going to talk about today. We do have biggest takeaways from week 2. Have our fantasy heroes. We'll also dive into the waiver wire, which is going to be incredibly important for the week for a lot of fantasy managers. But let's start with some fantasy headlines. And as Michael F. Florio just alluded to, Isaiah Pacheco suffered a fractured fibula in Kansas City's win over the Cincinnati Bengals on Sunday. Laquan, as of us doing this show, we don't know the official timeline or diagnosis for it, but all reports are he's going to be out for an extended period of time. It seems as though it's going to be unavoidable for him to go on injured reserve. So you look at that backfield in Kansas City. Samaje Perine is there. Carson Steele was getting some opportunity. Is there anybody you have any real interest in the Kansas City backfield, or do you have to look outside of KC for running back help?
I would look, elsewhere first, but you can look inside for Samaje Perine. Happy birthday, by the way. I feel like, Carson Steele, he's going to be a guy that's going to get touches. He's going to be in that rotation, but I think Samaje Perine plays as that third down back, be able to bail out Patrick Mahomes back there and be able to turn and get a field. That kind of what Jarrett McKinnon was, for Patrick Mahomes in the past. I do feel like they're going to probably bring in another running back from off the street. I mean, there's not much out there. Latavius Murray, I think Jarrett McKinnon you could bring back, and I don't think they want, the other guy, Kareem Hunt, coming back there, but I just feel as though it's going to be tough, for this run game with the loss of my Jersey brother, Isaiah Pacheco.
Yeah, and you mentioned some of the guys there. Clyde Edwards-Helaire started the season on the NFI list, so he's out for at least 2 more weeks before we can talk about him as an option. We'll see if maybe, as you mentioned, they try to bring in a free agent, or if they try and, somehow engineer a trade for a running back somewhere. I heard people suggesting maybe Khalil Herbert, getting him out of Chicago and bringing him to Kansas City.
But he's banged up with a hamstring right now.
So probably not the option that they want at the moment. Speaking of banged up, in Los Angeles, it has been a rough start to the season for the Rams. Puka Nacua is already on injured reserve, and there are reports, as you hear Laquan sighing deeply, reports that it could be a while, that we might be talking about week 9 or so before Nacua is ready to go for Los Angeles. Then, Florio, on Sunday, Cooper Kupp leaves with what's being called an ankle injury. He was seen in a walking boot leaving the stadium. So we're waiting for more updates on his situation. But it was a rough day for the Rams offensively yesterday, Mike. I mean, the leading receiver was DeMarcus Robinson, 2 catches for 50 yards. Nobody really made a big impact. So the question becomes, without Nacua, and if Kupp is going to miss time, do we have to pull the plug on Matthew Stafford as a starting fantasy quarterback?
Yeah, peek behind the curtains. I've already wrote the quarterback start him, sit him for week 3, and Matthew Stafford is a sit for me. One, because like you said, no Cooper, no Cooper Kupp, no Puka Nacua. Also, they get the 49ers, and Stafford has thrown 2 passing touchdowns in their last 3 games against the 49ers. What stood out to me yesterday, and I don't want to bully Laquan's team here, but he was getting sacked every play, it felt like. Anytime he stepped back, they were getting pressure on him. In fact, I believe the Cardinals have the highest sack rate in the NFL right now after yesterday's game, which is pretty wild. But yeah, after that, then they get the Bears, who their defense has been shutting people down. Then the Packers, the Raiders. I would anticipate this next month probably being just Kyren Williams, the only usable Ram. Because like you said, Robinson led the way, but he had all his production on 1 long catch. Every receiver not named Cooper Kupp had 4 targets or less yesterday. We saw Tutu Atwell getting involved. We saw Jordan Whittington getting involved. When it's an all-hands-on-deck approach and you have 4 receivers, you have no receiver that you could trust in fantasy.
And on top of it, it's a shaky offensive line right now for Los Angeles. So on top of not having real game-changing targets, Matthew Stafford also just not having a lot of time and protection to step back there and throw. It is not the start we were hoping for from the Rams offense. Things have gotten bleak in a hurry for Sean McVay and his group there. I was going to save you the pain of having to talk about it out loud, Laquan. So we'll move on.
Appreciate it.
We will move on. Evan Ingram, a surprise scratch. Just about an hour before kickoff, the Jaguars tweeting that Ingram injured his hamstring in pregame warmups and was not going to play. We'll see how long-term this might be in this offense. But LQ, I mean, the Jaguar passing game looked pretty awful yesterday. They really struggled to put anything together. I know we like Brian Thomas Jr., but I mean, beyond that, Christian Kirk, I mean, how excited can we be about the pass catchers in Jacksonville?
Man, it was a rough game, I would say. I mean, look, I tweeted yesterday. I mean, he had 16 passing yards in the third quarter after 5 drives, and it's like without Evan Ingram, is Trevor Lawrence falling apart? Like it's like only 1 touchdown. He's averaging 191 passing yards per game in these last 2 games, and like him and Christian Kirk don't look like they're on the same page as they were in previous season past. Like there was a lot of deep balls going to Christian Kirk, and it's like, man, did you run the wrong route, or is it overthrown? Is the timing messed up? Like I don't know what's going on in Duval over there, but man, Evan Ingram was a scratch right before the game, and it honestly looked like, you know, the game plan just was not the game plan they were going into that game with. So there's not many other pass catchers other than Brian Thomas Jr. that I'm honestly interested in on a week-to-week basis, because we see Gabe Davis getting all this volume, but it's kind of pulling what he did in Buffalo, all this cardio and all these targets, and not really making productivity out of those. So it's like a little frustrating that, you know, Trevor Lawrence is playing this way without Evan Ingram. Like we need somebody to step up in this offense.
If you saw some of the post-game quotes, whether it was Travis Etienne, Trevor Lawrence, you can sense a frustration from this group with how the offense is going. Right now, Doug Peterson not willing to admit out loud who's calling the plays. Is it him or is it Press Taylor? It's a bad situation right now down there in Jacksonville.
7 straight starts Lawrence lost. 7.
Yeah.
Ooh,
bad.
It's bad.
Nasty.
It is bad for sure. All right, it's time now for Fantasy Heroes presented by Subway. Let's take a look at the top scorers for Week 1. Still Monday Night Football left to be played, but Kyler Murray went berserk. 266 passing yards, 3 touchdowns, 28.54 fantasy points. Alvin Kamara stays hot, 180 total scrimmage yards, 4 total touchdowns, 3 of them on the ground. That was good for 44 points. I know, because I went against him in the Fantasy Live League. Thanks, Patrick Claybon. Marvin Harrison Jr., the recipient of a lot of that Kyler Murray work. 4 catches, 130 yards, a pair of touchdowns, 29 fantasy points. I guess he's not slow. George Kittle had a good day for the Niners in the loss. 7 catches, 76 yards, and a touchdown. That was good for 20.6 points. Austin Seibert, 7 field goals. The Commanders beat the Giants without scoring a touchdown. 21 points out of Austin Seibert. And for the Bills, they were the top defense of the week. 2 sacks, 3 INTs, a touchdown, 10 points allowed, 18 fantasy points there. But if we're going to pick on some guys that we want to salute, who maybe did not make this list. Laquan, who was your fantasy hero in Week 2?
Man, it has to be J.K. Dobbins. He is balling right now. I'll take this L early. I know last week I was telling Florio not to wave the flag, but I'm waving the flag this week, man. J.K. Dobbins is real. This is back-to-back games with over 130 rushing yards, and I'm going to ride this until the wheels come off. And crazy enough, he's still on the waiver wire in some leagues. And, like, even with Gus Edwards nearly getting 20 touches, like, just based on how efficient he is, he's still able to put up the big numbers, man. So I honestly think this is his backfield. He's out there running routes as well. So he's getting involved. And, like, Kamani Vidal, he's a healthy scratch again. So we might not ever see him again unless, you know, J.K. Dobbins is, you know, hurt or not playing at this high level he's been playing.
Yeah, I think Vidal right now is on the back burner. Hey, if you got him in Dynasty, hang on. But I think if you're in redraft leagues, you can probably make a move right now and move on from him. Just, you know, because it's just not really great. Florio, who is your hero for Week 2?
Trey McBride, because not only did I have, I'll take the little humble brag here. Trey McBride was my tight end 1 coming into the year, but more than that, the thing is, look at his peers who were in his running for tight end 1. Mark Andrews, we don't know if he is the best tight end on his own roster. Travis Kelce, I watched that entire game yesterday. I think Travis Kelce had a little cameo in it. Like, he's not doing much. And then Sam Laporta, I am legitimately freaked out when it comes to Sam Laporta because Jamison Williams has surpassed him in the target pecking order 2 weeks into the season. And not just like, okay, in between the 20s, like when they were in the red zone, they were making plays for Jamison Williams. So I am really, and then you add in the running backs there, you could make a case that in some games, Sam Laporta might be fourth in the pecking order for targets. So right now yesterday alone, Trey McBride, with the fumble recovery touchdown, because we play on NFL.com and we count those, has more fantasy points yesterday alone than any of those 3 tight ends have in the first 2 weeks combined. So he right now, look, it's only 2 weeks in, but if you went early tight end and you took McBride, you're feeling good. If you took one of those other 3, you're probably not feeling great today.
Yeah, it has not been good in the tight end department, but Trey McBride certainly giving folks a boost. So the rosters I have him on, those are the ones I'm feeling better about right now, for sure. For me, it's Devontae Adams. And a thing that, I think we all looked at the Raiders and said, I don't know, the quarterback situation could hold him back. But so far through 2 weeks, it has not been the case. Week 1, 6 targets, turned that into 5 catches for 59 yards. Yesterday, 12 targets, which turned into 9 yards for 9 catches for 110 yards and a touchdown in that surprise win over the Baltimore Ravens. And it was a thing that Adam Rank pointed out. We didn't like the quarterback situation last year, and Devontae Adams still got a ton of targets. This is looking pretty much like a narrowly funneled passing game, but Devontae Adams is still at the head of it. It's, a lot of work for Brock Bowers. Jacoby Myers is sort of getting some in there, but it's still kind of starts and ends with Devontae Adams. So if you took the shot on him and drafted him, certainly through 2 weeks, you feel good. I don't see that changing anytime soon. Speaking of things we took away from week 2, Laquan, what is the thing you learned after watching this week's games?
This is going to be my mini Rams rant. The defense is bad. Like, if you're looking for a bounce back to get back on track, you want to start your studs, your wide receivers, or you're looking for a sleeper upside, start all your wide receivers against the Rams defense, because we cannot stop anything. They were missing tackles. They were letting guys just break loose, looking like they were lost in that secondary. Like, this is a young secondary with some veterans there like John Johnson. You're expecting a little bit more, being that he's previously been with the Rams. And it's like, I don't want to go name dropping on here, but my takeaway here is, man, if you want to start your wide receivers, start them against the Rams for the rest of the season.
Yeah, it's not great, but at least it gives us something to kind of target when we're talking about setting fantasy lineups. Florio, what did you take away from the week?
Yeah, to just real quick on Laquan's, Brandon Ayuk bounce back, and Jamar Chase, week 3. My biggest takeaway is that Malik Neighbors is real, and he is spectacular. I know it came in the best possible matchup for wide receivers, but what he did yesterday cannot be ignored. 69% target rate, which means on almost 70% of the routes he ran, he was targeted. Highest target rate in any game in the next-gen stats era. He had 64% of the Giants' total targets, 63% of their completions, 71% of their passing yards, half of their touchdowns, and he had 197 air yards, which led the NFL in week 2. And watching that game, because I had a lot of interest in Neighbors and Jaden Daniels, every big play, 3rd and something, 4th and something, it was a design play for Malik Neighbors. So I know Daniel Jones is not great. I know next week they get the Cleveland Browns, and it's possible that Daniel Jones can look like he did when they lost 40-0 to the Cowboys last year. I don't see any way you could get away from Malik Neighbors, given how talented he is and how much volume he seems to get in this Giants offense.
Yeah, just so much volume. I don't really care if the quarterback is good or not. If they're going to keep feeding him targets like that, he's going to end up being successful for fantasy, certainly over the course of the year. For me, the thing I've learned is that the Saints offense is #good. It was one thing in week 1 when they put up 47 points on the Carolina Panthers. Like, all right, that team is bad. That's not really a surprise. But to come back the next week and drop 44 on the Dallas Cowboys means that Clint Kubiak has something working there in New Orleans. Derek Carr has been fantastic through 2 games, 5 touchdown passes, just 1 interception. Maybe not high yardage totals, although I guess in a league where people aren't really throwing the ball all that effectively, the fact that Carr has 2 games with 200 or more passing yards is notable. Then you have Alvin Kamara, who looks like the Alvin Kamara of old instead of just old Alvin Kamara, getting the ball out They're spreading it around, and we've done this so far without really having a really huge output out of a guy like Chris Olave. Rashid Shaheed has been the big stud. The 4 for 81, was nice for Chris Olave, but I think we're still waiting for something akin to a big blow-up game. But at the rate things are going in New Orleans, that big game for Olave is coming really soon. All right.
That's me holding the L for doubting this.
We're all holding the L on the Saints offense. We're all holding this one right now. Hopefully things will help us get better, though. That means going to the waiver wire. We will do that and give you our disappointments coming up after the break on the NFL Fantasy Football Show. Time for the waiver wire presented by YouTube TV. Florio, who are we checking for in week 3?
Derek Carr is a must-add right now. Sam Darnold and Geno Smith, also quarterbacks with good matchups next week if you need a streamer. Zach Charbonnet is the top running back add, followed by the Chiefs guys, Samaje Perine and Carson Steele. Braylon Allen had a huge week 2. Cam Akers, because we saw Joe Mixon get a little banged up on Sunday Night Football. Antonio Gibson was looking pretty good in week 2. Deontay Foreman had more run than we expected and has a good match against the Giants next week. And then some deep league players, Marshawn Lloyd and Trey Benson, just top handcuffs. Check to make sure if they are out there on your waiver wire. And then some wide receivers. Rashid Shaheed seems to catch a 50-yarder every single week, so he's in play. Alec Pierce and Quentin Johnson built off of their big week 1 yesterday. Greg Dortch, because he gets the Lions in week 3 and the Lions cannot cover the slot. Jalen Naylor, just because he might be the wide receiver 1 in Minnesota, depending on health. Andre Iosivas, I probably might have said that a little wrong, but the Bengals wide receiver. Jalen Tolbert as well, who had big volume, and then a couple of tight ends. Hunter Henry had elite volume in week 1. Mike Gesicki looked like a legit part of the Bengals offense. And then Laquan's boy, Jonnu Smith, who finished as a top 10 tight end in week 2.
Let's go.
All right, let's go back to the quarterbacks, though. Laquan, Sam Darnold, heading into Monday Night Football, is a top 10 fantasy quarterback through 2 games. Is this just kind of a flash in the pan, or is there some staying power here?
No, there's some staying power, man. That O-line is protecting him, and he's going back in that pocket, and he's just dishing it out and making huge plays with Justin Jefferson down the field, and hopefully he's going to be healthy enough to come back from that quad injury that he suffered in the game. But, like, look at this pass. Like, this is like Sam Darnold just shining at his best right now. Like, this feels a little bit different from the Carolina Panthers start in the early season. Like, this feels like this is a Sam Darnold's team, man. Like, we see the Vikings going out there putting up these plays like this, and it's, like, really refreshing to see that they don't skip a beat, with Kirk Cousins down in Atlanta.
Yeah, I thought last year when Darnold signed with the 49ers, everybody laughed, and I was like, well, if somebody could fix him, it might be Kyle Shanahan. The other guy who could possibly fix him is Kevin O'Connell, and 2 weeks in, it looks pretty good for Sam Darnold. Florio, real quick, because Braylon Allen was on your list. He scored 2 touchdowns yesterday for the Jets. If you have Breece Hall, you're not totally panicked, but should you at least be a little concerned?
I'm not. Yeah, maybe a little bit. He had 7 carries, which was half as much as Breece Hall had. 4 targets, half as much as Breece Hall had, and he became the youngest player in NFL history to score multiple touchdowns. I thought before this, like, he's someone you want on your roster because if something happens to Breece Hall, we know he's next in line, a top handcuff. But now seeing that he's getting work like this, he might even have standalone value. If you have Breece Hall, I think I'd be willing to up my bid a little bit on him. But even if you don't, he is the kind of running back you want on your bench because he's 1 injury away from being top 20 with even more upside.
Yeah, it seems as though handcuffing running backs is coming back into fashion again across fantasy, and it looks like Braylon Allen's going to be the guy you want if you went out and drafted Breece Hall. Let's get to some of the guys that disappointed us this week in cross fantasy football, and we all got pass catchers here on the list because the big story in the first 2 weeks is that passing numbers are down across the board. And Laquan, you have concerns about a guy in Indianapolis.
Yeah, Michael Pittman, man, it's not been good, man. Like, you would think a player of his size, his dynamic, and where he's aggressive at the catch, like, Anthony Richardson's not targeting him downfield. Only 1 target of 20-plus yards last game, and I feel as though, like, Alec Pierce is getting a little bit too much love, but guys that drafted Michael Pittman in those first 3 round of drafts were kind of wondering, where's this elite wide receiver 1 that we know he possesses? And it's, like, unfortunate at this point where we just kind of have to sit and wait to see what happens.
Yeah, just the passing game has not come through yet, and you're right. It has not been a lot of Michael Pittman. We just thought volume would win out, and he hasn't had the volume so far.
No.
Speaking of pass catchers who aren't getting volume, we were worried about Amon-Ra St. Brown, Florio, but maybe we were worried about the wrong Lions pass catcher.
Yeah. I know I touched on tight ends earlier, but yesterday was a game where the Lions threw 56 passes. Jared Goff threw 55 of them. 3 went Sam Laporta's way. 20 of them went to the top 2 wide receivers. Then you have both running backs getting more targets than Sam Laporta as well. If you drafted Sam Laporta, you have to relax. There's no look at the tight end position. You're not finding anything better on waivers. You need to continue to start him. I still think he'll have some blow up weeks. He's still going to be utilized in the red zone, but the floor is very, very concerning now because it is certainly much low. We thought maybe he could take a step forward, and so far 2 weeks in, he has taken like 3 steps back.
Yeah, I mean, Jameson Williams really does look like he's not going away in the context of the Lions offense. And, I saw a tweet. I saw a tweet from the very wise, very intelligent Dwayne McFarland that maybe now Sam Laporta is more like George Kittle. There's a lot of similarities between the Niners and the Lions and the 49ers offense. And so Laporta will still have some of those high ceiling blow up games, but the week to week volatility might get a little more, volatile. With a guy like Laporta, especially because Jameson Williams is becoming a really big part of the Detroit passing game. For me, it's Terry McLaurin, and for similar reasons to what Laquan talked about with Michael Pittman in Indianapolis. McLaurin looks like the number 1 wide receiver. He has all the skills of a number 1 wide receiver, but right now he has a quarterback that's not really getting the ball out to him, and is certainly not getting the ball downfield. It was a better showing in week 2 than it was in week 1. That's not saying a whole lot. I mean, this is a Washington team that had to win on the strength of 7 field goals over the weekend against the New York Giants. And so now it's like Terry McLaurin isn't getting a whole lot of opportunity. Let's talk about it, guys, because we mentioned the waiver wire here. I mean, you're not moving on from Pittman. You're not moving on from Laporta. You're not moving on from McLaurin. But what do you do? Because you probably spent a relatively high pick, Laquan, on these guys, and they're not really giving you anything. I mean, how long can you afford to wait?
Man, I mean, at least with Michael Pittman, I'm giving it a week or two because I really feel as though, they're going to get it together. It might be a blow-up game with Marvin Harrison Jr. Maybe we're panicking a little too soon, but he's still a great wide receiver for that Colts offense where I think he can bring a lot more out of Anthony Richardson if he's going to be utilized more, downfield.
We will see how this thing turns out when it's all said and done. Anyway, time for Moments We Love, presented by Barefoot Wine. We find something we see across the interwebs that just make us happy. We talked about J.K. Dobbins and his blow-up to start the season. And he tweeted this over the weekend. He says, check the jersey out. It's a young J.K. Dobbins rocking a LaDainian Tomlinson jersey.
Yo, that's cool.
It's a great jersey. I will say this, Florio, through 2 weeks, he's run a little bit like LT in that Charger offense.
He might not have the high-end speed of LT, but he's getting the same results. He's looking the part. He's playing as their RB1. He is their RB1, and more than that, he is someone that I think you can trust with confidence moving forward, and just hope he stays healthy.
Yeah.
Laquan, I mean, you mentioned taking the L on J.K. Dobbins. Does this mean we're done with Gus Edwards? Does he go back to waivers, or are we just hanging on to him?
Look, man, I dropped Gus Edwards. I'm not going to lie to you because I think this is JK's backfield. But that picture, man, how old is he, man? Is he got shoulder pads on, or is he just that jacked as a kid? Geez.
He's probably that jacked.
Look at those shoulders, bro.
I'm going to guess he's
jacked
got
as a kid.
Shoulder pads on.
Man.
He's what, maybe 6, 7 years old?
He could
trucking kids and Pop Warner.
Snowmobile at that point.
Oh, man.
But good stuff there from J.K. Dobbins. It's been a great start to the season. And whether or not you drafted him or you faded him, if you were just a fan of football, it's great to see him come back after a couple of really tough years in terms of injuries. For him to come back and play well the first 2 weeks of the season. So hopefully everything stays good for him. He continues to be productive and, more importantly, just stays on the field because it's been fun watching him play.
He broke the curse. Let's go.
So far. Let's find out. We will see. But thank you for hanging out with us. As always, that is it. We are done. We appreciate you hanging out with the NFL Fantasy Football Show. You know the drill. Tell 2 friends to tell 2 friends. Rate, review, and remember, You're not lazy, just on power saving mode. Be safe, take care of yourselves, and we will talk to you all tomorrow.